Family and friends, welcome to a new series on emotions. Today we talk about fear and how to embrace it. But before we do that, I want to explain why emotions are so important to the well being of our souls. Mental health and ultimately overall physical health is directly tied to the management of emotions. One of my favorite quotes is by a Greek philosopher named Epictetus, who was quoted for saying that it is not what happens to you that matters, it is how you react to what happens to you that matters. So much clarity in so few words. As souls, our lives are all about purpose, reason for being, revelation that the power to control your thoughts is ultimately yours has forever changed the limits of self-awareness, pushing the boundaries of personal achievement to infinite possibilities. Controlling your emotions, however, is an ability gained with time. Being human never gets easier. Every age comes with a new set of challenges, but with practice, you can develop a sense of awareness that will prepare you for the inevitable emotional response. It's all a matter of choice. The secret I've found to this controlling factor is to realize that the more you expose yourself to the concepts of these emotions, the better prepared you will be at controlling the reaction. This is done through visualization. You mentally internalize hypothetical scenarios on how you may react to them. You do this consistently so that when something does happen, you have already figured out the most logical reaction. In the case of fear, it has been the greatest tool for me in embracing and overcoming it. Albert Einstein once said that imagination is more powerful than knowledge. Most of the world comprehends that to be in regards to the physical aspects of life. However, I would like to think that applies to the spiritual as well. Now, I'm not promising you won't ever feel fear if you do A, B, and C. It is like every emotion embedded into what makes us human. Fear's greatest attribute is its debilitating consequence on the human psyche. It really only serves two purposes. One, to elicit a flight or fight response, or two, to establish limitations, all of which are determined by our brain power that limits our freedom of choice. Our fight or flight responses are hardwired into our DNA. It is a part of God's design that promotes the continuity of life. However, our limitations are derived from what we tell ourselves is our limit, a total mental construct taught or imposed by society. With the right amount of soul wisdom, something we like to call intuition, and knowledge, experience regarding overcoming obstacles, you can literally do anything simply by choosing so. When we talk about our greatest fears, the majority of us think of death. And yes, what's not to fear about it? However, how you feel and how much fear you let affect you regarding this inevitable fact is determined by how much about death you know and you care to comprehend, and most importantly, understand. I've always thought it to be ironic on how sure we are about how we are born, but yet perpetuate to have no clue about what's after death. When if you take a true minute to think through the logic of the universe, it shows you simply that life is in a constant transformation of energy. The evidence surrounds us loudly in every aspect of our lives. However, most of us really have a chance to comprehend it for ourselves. It's not our fault. It is alert behavior, fearing death. However, we can choose to embrace it instead. See, that's the wonderful thing about fear. If given enough thought, you can actually use it to motivate in some form or the other. Fear is really just doubt disguised as the unknown. So logically, identifying the unknown should, in theory at least, eliminate the fear. But we all know that is not necessarily so. You see, how we perceive fear itself has all to do with how you overcome, or like I like to say, embrace it. Analyzing what you are afraid of and then determining what your choices are going to be in regards to handling that fear is the path towards ultimately overcoming it. It doesn't mean you are any less afraid. It just means you have circumvented permanent stagnation regarding that fear. In other words, you have given it enough thought from a logical perspective. You calculated the risk of exposure to said fear and decided on a plan of action. This is where the magic is, and the unthinkable gets done. And that is the problem. You see, we don't like to think about fear because it's so uncomfortable. But if you can always put aside emotions and look at it from a logical perspective, you will always overcome. Those who are better at comprehending these facts, in my opinion, are simply better at getting things done. You know the saying, what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger? It is one of the most factual aspects of human development. And there is a term for it. It's called PTG, post-traumatic growth. Now, unlike its famous brother PTSD, fear is not amplified. It is embraced as a positive reassurance of survival and a can-do mentality. Now, unfortunately, not everyone experiences PTG, and as a result, it is less heard of, and turns out it's a good thing. Now, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, on the other hand, can and most often lead to poor mental health. Now, for some, the experience is too much to internalize and respond to in a positive manner. Last year, I faced one of my fears and jumped out of a plane. The irony was that by the time I jumped, there was little fear left in me, as that moment was the end of a 15-year journey of getting to that point in time. You see, mentally and physically, I had prepared extensively. I always thought about doing it. Now, besides visually replaying in my mind what I thought would transpire, in that time I found myself in those 15 years doing things like parasailing and indoor skydiving. And when that moment arrived, I had sold my brain on its high probability. I remember thinking that we take a bigger risk just flying commercially, as there are no parachutes on board a commercial airliner. I told myself that if I fly all the time without the option to parachute out of a badly disabled airplane, then there should be no problem, logically, jumping out of a perfectly good airplane with a parachute. Now, it is then I realized how dangerously fragile our ability to believe in something really is, and as a result, how powerful, because some may look at jumping out of a perfectly good airplane as being crazy. And to me, the crazy part is trusting that hundreds of thousands of pieces will work when they have to, every time, when flying as a passenger with no parachute on a commercial airplane. Not to forget the blind trust we instill on these pilots and airlines to get us back and forth safely. Now, with that said, family and friends, once you convince yourself that your fear can be logically rationalized, and all it takes is enough visualization, ultimately action, to see it embraced. Minimizing the time doing so is what's crucial, but you must always strive to face your fears. Our time in this life is limited, and besides, you can only grow stronger from the exposure. Now, stay tuned for my next episode in the series. It's about anger. Until then, may you have a meaningful and purposeful week. God bless.